subject here, but most of us who've lived a little life out there or live with beloved pets accumulate parasites. If you're struggling with gas, bloating, loose stools, or constipation, or if you often feel tired and weak, there's a good chance you might have a parasite. According to the CDC, millions of Americans are infected, but most of us are unaware. That's why folks are loving Paratarget by Nature's Blast. Paratarget contains a unique blend of natural ingredients that help kick those parasites to the curb. People who use it have reported better digestion and improved energy levels. Just one scoop mixed into your favorite room temperature or cold drink every day does the trick. You'll even get delicious recipes for a tropical smoothie and refreshing citrus sunrise mocktail. Try Paratarget for yourself and save 35% on your order today. Go to Nature's Blast store and enter discount code Bryce at checkout. That's Nature's Blast store to get 35% off of Paratarget. Enter Bryce, B-R-Y-C-E, at checkout. Welcome to the Bryce Eddy Show. Hey, so my guest today is a little bit different. We are going to be talking about something a little bit lighter. You know, with Charlie's death, things have been heavy and things have been dark, and you know the world is at war, and things are tense and intense, and so we're going to shake it up and talk to a guy that I am excited to have on the show, Kris Gethin.
Thank you very much for having me on, bud. This is a great little setup you got here.
Yeah, so let me set you up a little bit. You know, so we met at the gym. And that is your world, and it's been your world for a very long time. And I'm going to have you talk about your bio and background and all that. But I'm having you in here for selfish reasons because, you know, I just turned 51, and I'm in a space where I'm starting to feel that a little. And I know you and I are pretty similar age.
Same age, 51, yeah.
Yeah, and you've been at it in the fitness world, and you're an expert on many things that I'd like to talk to you about. And again, for selfish reasons, man, I'm going to try to drain you of some knowledge, and hopefully I'll get stretch marks on my brain. I know you're an expert in some of the things that are bubbling up today, like peptides and things that even people in the industry aren't as deep as you are on that. So I'm curious about that and curious about supplements. And I'm going to ask you some really key questions on that. But first, man, I'd love to hear your story. I know you were born in Wales, right? And I'd love to hear what your journey is like. So give me some bio and background on who you are.
Sure. So, yeah, I grew up on a farm in Wales, like, you know, most of the people in Wales are on farms, and most of my family are farmers. And, you know, so from a very young age, you know, learned the discipline of work ethic. You know, I have to wake up early before school, help on the farm, and help after work weekends and stuff. And I didn't mind it. I liked it at the time. I didn't really know anything else. And I was definitely more of a loner. And, you know, I've never played team sports or anything like that. I like just my own time, my individual time. So it was the perfect sanctuary for that. And it was at the age of 6 years old, I started racing motocross. And I didn't want to be at school. I just wanted to be at home on my motorbike. You know, I was very easily distracted. I was a daydreamer. I used that to my advantage later in life. Even though I was told at school, you know, that was a bad thing. It'd always be on the report, Kris is always daydreaming, easily distracted, blah, blah, blah. But I didn't want to be there, in all honesty. I wasn't learning anything that I felt that I wanted to retain. I don't know if I could retain it, but I just didn't want to. And so I just wanted to race motorbikes. And so I got addicted to adrenaline at an early age, and that was my identity. But, you know, as a lot of people in the, you know, the motocross or supercross industry knows, for a lot of people, it can be a very short-lived time. And at the age of like 19, 20 years old, I retired. And it was a back issue that put that retirement.
Yeah, I was going to ask if it was any significant injuries.
Yeah, a lot of injuries. Yeah. A lot of injuries is the back, though. That
you get big forearms and broken collarbones.
Pardon?
Big forearms and broken collarbones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a lot of people break their collarbones going over the bars. But like I had just such a severe curvature of the spine, just like the majority of the corners, I think were left-hand corners. And over time, I wasn't the smoothest rider. It just kept knocking my spine out. So if you look at an x-ray now, my spine is like left aligned in my pelvis by about an inch. And so it was just a lot of issues. And I kind of lost my way for about 5 years because my identity was motocross. I didn't know what else to do. So I started racing downhill mountain bike, racing, thinking I'd be a little bit safer. But during that time that I'm racing downhill mountain biking, now I'm doing drugs, I'm drinking alcohol, I'm partying all the time because that part of my teenage years did not exist because I was racing motocross. But now I feel like I'm catching up, and I'm dealing or subconsciously with depression. I just didn't really know it, and I'm just trying to cover it up. And it wasn't until, because now, I'm seeing osteopaths, I'm seeing massage therapists, I'm seeing chiropractors. And it wasn't until I started doing physiotherapy and I was alleviated of some of that pain that I was dealing with in my back, that now I'm alleviated a little bit of the depression that I was dealing with that was associated with that as well. So that's when I started creeping down that rabbit hole and started to work out more and started to enjoy that feeling that I was gaining from it. And now I wanted to learn about it. I wanted to learn about training properly, nutrition, because where I was, there wasn't really any guidance. There's nobody I could lean upon. And,
and approximately what years are we talking about?
I'm
then?
about 24 years old now.
Okay, and that would be the mid 90s kind of a thing.
Yeah, because
Okay.
it was then I decided to go to college and study it. So I went to college and studied international health and sports therapy for 3 years. And this is the first time in my life I felt like I was able to retain content. No longer was I daydreaming or easily distracted, because now this is something that I actually wanted to learn about, because I could feel the effects and how it was changing me as a person. I wasn't proud of the characteristics that I was becoming. I got arrested once for drugs, and I just remember the look on my father's face at the time, the disappointment, and I really needed to change things. And I felt that this was a turning point, that I could actually live a life a little better and see life with more clarity. And that's exactly what it gave me, because now I feel, in retrospect, now I'm eating foods, or starting to eat foods, that is not nourishing my body as much, but my brain. So I'm able to think clearer. And I've got better reaction time and, better memory recall. And of course, the endorphin rush that you're getting from working out as well. I'm just feeling better all around. So then 3 years in college, I decided I wanted to use those international qualifications to get myself out of Wales. Because at that time, I just didn't feel the opportunities were there, and I wanted to get away from my social circle. And that social circle was just like party hard, have a good
kind
time.
of interrupt the pattern.
Yeah, exactly. So I needed to needed to attach myself to a different social circle. I knew it just wasn't there in this small area in the middle of Wales. So I used that that qualification to first move to the US and work on cruise liners out of Fort Lauderdale, going around the Caribbean and the Florida Keys and Mexico. And I quickly realized, as a personal trainer on the ship, that people in the US tip, but there's tipping a massage therapist a lot more than the personal trainers. And I had my massage qualifications too. So then I started doing that on the cruise liners and started basically saving all of those tips as basically my living money, and saving everything else. And after 8 months on a cruise liner, I felt that's enough time at sea. And I'd met some people from Australia, and they seemed like a real good time. So I decided, let's go to Australia, see what that's all about. And I moved there, and within 24 hours, I got a job at a gym, just working on the floor, cleaning up the gym and, giving people a spot and putting the weights back and stuff like that. And at that time, I'd gone to a natural bodybuilding show, and I watched the people compete there. And there's a person that was guest posing called Mark Costanti. And I thought, there is, the usual reaction. There is no way that person's natural. Impossible. Can't look like that. He's a freak, shredded, veins all over his abs, like huge, muscular. But I decided, that's what I really wanted to do. I wanted to pursue this natural bodybuilding freakish thing that's on stage. And Mark become a friend. I become friends with Mark, and I became training partners with Mark. And that's when I realized, okay, I'm living under a very short ceiling here. And it's people like Mark who don't have a ceiling. They don't think like that. They just invite that positivity into their universe. And their resilience is just unbelievable compared to us mortals. So that's how I started to kind of adapt that lifestyle. and be very, very open-minded of what could be achieved naturally. And I just really, really enjoyed not so much competing. I didn't like being on stage, didn't like the oiling up process. I didn't like the water depletion and all that crap. I just loved bodybuilding. So I didn't get into bodybuilding to compete. I just actually happened to get into competing because I love bodybuilding, you know, weight training.
Right.
And I like the effects of that. But the competition aspect just gave me a target because I knew that I could relapse pretty quick and life would be a white knuckle ride if I didn't go all or nothing on something. So I just really liked having those targets every year or so. I wouldn't compete every 3-6 months. I wasn't that kind of person. I'll compete in 2 years' time and I'll see how good I'll do there and then move on to the next. And I was always trying to do shows that I knew were probably a little bit out of my depth. So it wasn't until I actually moved to the US that I actually won my first show. I was always getting second. It was always just there, almost there. But I liked that. That was the carrot to, you know, continue to pursue more. But I started doing cardio then in the mornings around Sydney, Australia, where I was living. And I had these little trifold leaflets that I'd put together offering one-on-one training. And I'd never offered like 10-pack or 20-pack. It was always 12 weeks or 18 weeks. I wanted to give people a definitive time and a sense of urgency to get in shape because I knew if I had those pictures, that's great marketing for me at the end of the day, having these before and after pictures, because not everybody's going to relate to me. They're going to relate to that mother of 3, that father who's 55 or whatever. And I did that every morning for a couple of years, and I was doing one-on-one training at people's homes, on the beaches. I loved doing it on the beaches because I could train a client. If I had half an hour or an hour between clients, I'd go surfing in the ocean, go for a swim, whatever.
And you were, I mean, on the beach, were you doing weight training stuff or body weight training?
It was all
I mean, what was it?
Yeah, so I had something called the Total Trainer that Chuck Norris was advertising on TV. I had one of them in the back of my car. I had kettlebells. I had boxing mitts and pads. So all sorts, you know, skipping rope. There was a lot of functional movement, but resistance movements in there as well. And, you know, the park is a playground at the end of the day. There's so much that you could do. I'd get them on the beach, dig a hole, and then they'd have to go into the ocean, dump the sand, and then come back out with a bucket of water and fill that hole. So there's
it's
always
like functional stuff, you know, just movement stuff.
sandbags
cool.
and stuff like that.
Fun little fact to Chuck Norris. I interviewed a couple of days ago I'm a longtime Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy, and I'm a Carlos Machado black belt, and so the audience knows this, but he gave the Machado family, so the Gracies and Machados are cousins, he bought them their first lease of their martial arts studio. So he's responsible for really part of what the rise of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu here in the United States was, because he saw it, you know, wrestled those guys, felt helpless, and then started training jiu-jitsu. So Chuck Norris was a real deal in terms of kind of that holistic approach of just the guy that's going to find out how to do things and be about kind of constant, never-ending growth.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's great, like watching, you know, him and Bruce Lee back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, practicing with each other, and then obviously on screen and whatnot, and to see them actually bringing martial arts to the mainstream. So to kind of turn it into a business aspect like that, I think is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to throw that tangent in there because he's more of a phenomenal character than I think most people know.
Yeah. People just think he's just great at doing like Nicolas Cage type B movies.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, so you're having them fill buckets on the beach, and you're doing you know, functional stuff and training people anywhere and everywhere you can.
Yeah, and I don't know why during this time I just wanted to have a gym, because, you know, I love going to like old school gyms, you know, with the Nautilus and the Flex equipment, and I just really wanted a gym. So I saved all the money that I was getting to basically purchase a gym, which I did then after 2 years of just saving really, really hard, of a gym that had already been opened. And it was like a personal training studio as opposed to a gym. Half of it was mixed martial arts, and the other side of it was a gym. So I wanted to carry on the mixed martial arts aspect of it, because I was really into mixed martial arts back in the day of when it was cage fighting before UFC. And so I continued, had those instructors. I started learning myself. So, you know, over a year's period of, I started teaching Muay Thai and really enjoyed that aspect. But, you know, bodybuilding was my foundation. My pivotal foot was always in the gym, and I'd put the other foot out
I
elsewhere.
had kind of a similar thing. You know, I was always, because there's a lot of guys that are in mixed martial arts that don't really lift. Especially in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world, you know, that was like their singular everything, right? And I always had the, you know, lifestyle of the gym and bodybuilding and all of that, you know, from growing up watching, you know, Arnold Schwarzenegger films and everything else, and never wanted to lose or abandon that, but wanted to also continue on the martial arts side, and I think that's valuable.
Oh, for sure. We know now it is. Back
Sure.
then, you know, it's like, it's going to get you bulky. It's going to slow you down. Coming from the motocross background, it was the same thing. It's going to slow you down. You need to be biking. You need to be swimming. You need to be running. Not so much the weight training. But now we know that, okay, you don't have to get big and bulky. You just need to be strong. You need to be powerful.
That's right.
But still, you know, functional and mobile. And that's what hybrid athleticism is all about. And I think there's a lot of value, especially as we get a little bit older. But then with that gym, you know, ran that for a couple of years. It was probably one of the worst decisions I made because I was just working such long hours. I was opening the gym at 5 o'clock in the morning and like closing at 9 o'clock at night. And I was exhausted. And by the time I finished, I didn't want to, you know, or during the day, I didn't even want to train in that gym. I would do it because I was very disciplined, but it, you know, I was used to doing things that I didn't want to do, and I just
Yeah,
did
you got to
it.
be aware of making a business out of something you love.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I'd have half a day off on a Sunday. Would close at like midday, I think it was 2 o'clock. So the rest of that day, I'd just be off, and I'd go and train somewhere else at a different gym. A friend of mine, Metz, he owned Titan Gym, so I'd go to Coogee Beach and train it, and that was like my holiday. You know, that was my break. But then I still had this itch. I wanted to reach more people. I'm transforming these people that were coming into the gym. I had to convert them because they'd look at the equipment and go, "Is that all you got?" But as soon as I showed them the before and after pictures of clients, they're like, "Sign me up." I'm like, "How many squat racks do you need? How many leg extensions do you need? You don't need all that stuff. Just need to have the right mentality." And but I wanted to reach more people. So I thought, well, I didn't have internet back then. They had magazines. So I bought Merriam-Webster's book on journalistic writing, and I taught myself basically how to write. And I started submitting content to magazines in Australia, in the US, in Europe, and it started to stick. And I started to get content published so I could actually reach more people. And I really enjoyed this process. As I'm getting better about it, I'm watching other writers, people like Jeremy Clarkson from Top Gear, and like he's a great, funny, humorous writer. You know, writing about cars, which would be deemed as quite boring. He made it quite funny. And then there's a guy who was the editor-in-chief of Flex magazine called Peter McGough from the UK. He's living in the US, and he's got that same sort of humor. And I started kind of nicking pieces of you know, the delivery of that content, and I really enjoyed it.
For you Americans, that means stealing content.
Stealing, nicking.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, nick it. So you can claim that as your own. And so I decided, you know what, I want to do this full time now. I want to sell the gym, and I want to do it I want to go to the Mecca. I want to go to Venice, California, where all the bodybuilders are at, and see if I can make this stick.
Now, at that time, I mean, you were still natural, and that was your focus.
Yeah.
What did you think at the time with all of the? I mean, you know, I think it was probably the 1990s that they started getting what I would consider extreme.
Dorian was the first. Dorian Yates was the first.
Dorian Yates is still my favorite bodybuilder, though.
He's a good friend.
Okay, yeah. I have great admiration for him because he's also transformed himself into something else too. Right.
Yeah, he's a very smart guy. Very thinking.
Thoughtful, you know, philosophical. Like I've only the more I'd listened to him after the fact. I mean, loved him as a bodybuilder, but I also like him as a human being. I find him fascinating. But what were you thinking at that time with, you know, some of the guys that were really putting their health at risk? I mean, in a dramatic fashion. I mean, a lot of those guys just didn't survive. You know, what were your thoughts as you watched that, and you know, what are your thoughts now about how that's even changed? Because like Chris, what is it, Bumgartner?
Chris Bumstead.
Bumstead, yeah, sorry. You know, I love I love that category where
the
it's more of
physique.
that classic physique. I
Yeah.
think they call it, right?
That's right.
Where it's going back to the the 70s sort of style where you still look good, but you don't look grotesque
Yeah.
as some of these guys have gotten. I mean, what are your general thoughts on that?
Do you know what? It's funny you should say. I was a huge fan of it
Okay.
because I loved a freak show. Like, I would never, ever go to an actual bodybuilding show. To me, that's boring because it's attainable. I
Right.
want to see something to me that is completely unattainable and a freak show.
Oh, that's an interesting
So
answer.
I love
Yeah.
going to those shows, and I moved to the US and I thought, I'm going to give this a go. I'm just going to pack everything up and risk this. And after 6 months of submitting content, and I had a couple of visits up at Woodland Hills with Flex Magazine and
Yeah, I grew up there.
Publications. So I was, okay,
Yeah.
Reader Publications. So I had a couple of meetings up there, and after 6 months of just annoying them, I managed to get a job there full
Yeah,
time.
Weeder was actually an insurance client of mine for a brief period of time too.
No
Yeah.
way. Yeah, that's cool. So I had breakfast with Joe. He
Yeah.
was the guy who actually introduced me to. It was a salmon and cream cheese bagel. Yeah, I'd never had anything like that before. I said, yeah, I'll try it out. And so now I've got my dream job. I can't believe this. I'm living the dream, writing for the publications that I was reading when I was in Wales.
Yeah, that's
looking
great.
at these magazines. And now I'm training in Gold's Gym Venice, where some of those people that were in those magazines, like your Tito Raymonds, your Mike O'Hearns, are right next to me. I'm like, wow, this is phenomenal. And I absolutely loved that life. But now I'm going to all the top bodybuilding shows, your Arnold Classics, the Olympias. I went to my first Olympia in 2001 when I was still living in Australia, because I'm writing for an Australian magazine. And I just really enjoyed that freak show, that freak aspect of it, just what could be achieved, whether on steroids or not, whatever. I don't care about that. That's their life. That's up to them. You've got people that are in the pubs drinking alcohol or whatever. I'm not judging them. That's your life. It's what you want to do. But I just like to see that freakish aspect of it.
Yeah, that's an interesting answer. And yeah, and I'm not opposed to it, obviously, and people want to do what they want to do. But I just feel like it lost something when it got to that,
Yeah, but you can generalize, because you could look at, for instance, today's bodybuilders. You got Samson, who just won the Mr. Olympia. He's got a beautiful, symmetrical physique.
Yeah.
Tight waist, doesn't look bloated, looks great. But then you've got the Nick Walker, who's got a blocky waist and freakish physique and varicose veins. So you could look at that and go, yeah, that's not good. But you can't say the same thing about Samson. There's just more of a mix today than there was back then.
No, that's true. And I just, look, I love aesthetics and an attractive look. And some of that, when, we're going to this, mass monster sort of phase, and some of the, bloated bellies and things like that. It's like, okay, slow your roll, dude.
I think there's a few things that's contributed to that. Yes, there's a lot more synthetics and chemicals that people are experimenting with, but I honestly believe, to a certain extent, it's what the food that people are consuming as well.
That makes sense.
It's, you've got hormones, you've got artificial sweeteners, you've got these vegetable oils. Like here in the US especially, people are doing sugar-free everything, because when you're on a diet, a lot of people are trying to make it as easy as possible.
Right.
Whereas I think, to a certain degree, back in the day, we'd relish the challenge and feel like we're on a diet, and we'd want to be kind of, I don't know, moving on vapors, as it were. But now you just want to make it comfortable. Don't want to be uncomfortable. So a lot of people have sugar-free this and put the sweet and low on their oats and whatnot.
That's an interesting point, because I talk all the time about, if we're chasing comfort, that's bad for you.
Yeah, for sure.
And in jiu-jitsu, we talk about becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Of course.
And life should be a little bit hard, and resistance and stress and all those things. Obviously, stress is what makes a body grow. Lifting weights,
it's a hormetic responder.
That's right. Hormesis. So I think that is a lot of the problem, and that makes sense. And hey, I'm excited about some of the things that are happening right now in our administration, because we are starting to look at some of the poisonous things that they're doing to us
today
intentionally.
About Walmart getting rid of all artificial dyes now, as of today.
Yeah. So I think some progress is going to be made the more people wake up to the fact that, yeah, I mean, we're kind of willfully poisoning ourselves here in America, you know, in the pursuit of profit and in the pursuit of that comfort that you're talking about.
Of course, of course. So I think that has an aspect to it, you know, because I've actually, like, I remember when Dorian used to come here to prepare, you know, like a few weeks out before the Olympia, he would allow himself one sweetener per day because he honestly felt, and like he had quite a big waistline, he knows that, but he was shoveling an enormous amount of food, you know, over 5,000 calories every single day.
Yeah.
And, but he knew that this can have a negative effect. And he would always say, if he's putting too much stress on his kidneys, he is not going to be able to lose the fluid required to compete and look dry. And he had that dry look. So I feel that a lot of people...
Describe that for my audience, what the dry look means.
It's like a grainy look where there's no subcutaneous fluid under the skin. So you are seeing every single fiber underneath the muscle.
Which is beyond just being ripped.
Yeah, beyond being ripped. It's like that depth, fibrous,
I
sinewy
think he
look.
has a couple of the greatest photos that have ever been taken in bodybuilding history. Like a couple of those black and whites.
Kevin Horton took those. A good friend of mine, he took those in his gym, in the Temple gym back in the day in '93. And that circulated, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks out before the Olympia. And he was like about 12 to 15 pounds heavier than the year before. And those images, you know, Peter McGough secretly kind of put them out there, showed some of the other competitors before the Olympia, and everyone's like,
just intimidating.
everyone's competing for second now. That is it. You know, it was over. It was over. Yeah, they're
cool.
iconic pictures.
I love a little bit of the history that you know there. That's cool.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. It's phenomenal. Just, you know, hearing some of those stories, like Kevin was the guy who shot the Blood and Guts video series as well. And the one, there's a back workout that you'll see, it kind of changes halfway through where he's not wearing a bandana and then he is wearing a bandana because he ran out of film. And he knows that he's run out of film, but he didn't have the guts to tell Dorian, I didn't shoot that. And he told him at the end, he said, can we reshoot that? He's like, are you freaking kidding me? You think I can do that all over again? So Kevin had to go back to London, then drive back up from London to Birmingham the week after to reshoot that bit.
Oh, how funny. All right, so you were writing now, Weeder, writing for these publications. You got your dream job. You're doing it. Let's go from there.
Yeah. So now, you know, I'm still competing as well every now and again in between all of this. I've competed in the Natural World Bodybuilding Championships in Canada. I got second there. And I started, after a couple of years, I started publishing my own magazine because the one thing that I didn't appreciate at the time is that I would submit my content, it would get edited. And now the images that are accompanying my editorial, I didn't really like. A lot of it was kind of fake spray and, you know, fake sweat and fake weights and sunglasses in the gym, which isn't very realistic. And I just really wanted to put out something that I felt that was a pursuit of bodybuilding.
Yeah, and the first time you get edited by an editor, sometimes, you know, like I've had some of my stuff. You know, I tend to write like I speak.
Yeah.
And some of it's, you know, my, you know, odd humor or some of the words that I'm choosing. And when they pull some of that stuff out or rearrange things, you know, you almost take a little bit of like a, hey.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly. You've just
You're
diluted.
taking my personality a little bit out of
I spent a lot of time on that.
Yeah.
And now it's diluted. I'm like, and now I'm going to blend in with the rest of this publication, you know? And so I decided, I went online and I found, and I'm living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Marina del Rey now. And I found this like commercial size printer, and I purchased this thing used, and I've got it in my little apartment. And I decided I'm going to start writing a magazine. And I got Dorian to contribute to it. I got Lenda Murray to contribute, Bill Grant from Arnold's Day, a few chiropractors and all that sort of stuff, and put together a publication. And I just remember at like 2 o'clock in the morning, the warm pages being delivered into my hand like I was getting, you know, this is my baby being delivered to me, you know? It really felt like that.
I love it.
And I thought, oh, wow, this is really cool. I've actually got something tangible here, but I'm no good at sales, terrible at sales. And I don't even want to touch that, you know, because you have to have this magazine, this publication covered. So I did sell a few ads and whatnot, but I kind of did a lot of freelance writing because I could write really, really quick. And back then, we're getting paid really, really good for an article. You know, you're getting paid anywhere between like $1,000, $3,000 an article, and I could punch out a couple of those a day easy. So I was basically using that to kind of cover the publication because it was just a hobby. It was just a passion. I didn't really have an outcome, what was going to happen with this magazine. I just liked it being put out there. It was in like Gold's Gym, and it was in Metroflex Gym in Texas, the proper gyms. And I loved that. And now I realize in retrospect, you don't need to put something out there to try to get something in return. Because when I did put that out there, Ryan DeLuca, who's the founder of bodybuilding.com, I don't know if you've met Ryan.
I've never met him, but I know him.
Great guy. He said, hey, I need an editor-in-chief. You write, you edit, you publish, you take pictures, because I'm taking pictures as well for these publications and now my own. Would you interview for this job? So I flew up here to Boise, and I was like, this is my kind of place. Because I was in LA, I was in Sydney, but it's not my kind of place. I don't like cities much.
Yeah.
But I like this. It's like a small town atmosphere, but it is a city at the same time. But if it was up to me, I'd be living right in the boonies, but the compromise with my wife is just on the outskirts. And so I got the job as editor-in-chief here for bodybuilding.com. And now magazines are slowly, just very, very slowly, getting taken over by these websites, you know, especially bodybuilding.com. No one really understood it. No one could really see it come in, and everybody was downplaying it. You know, a lot of people were naive to how resourceful the online world could be, you know, and it grew exceptionally fast. Like when I started at BBCom, there was 30 of us, and it was a join to the warehouse. And then within like several years, it's like 450. Like you couldn't remember people's names. It was growing that quickly. So now I'm doing the exact same thing, you know, but now we're in charge of podcasts, we're in charge of video publication, as well as editorial publication. So there was a lot to kind of manage there, but I really, really enjoyed it. But it was at that time, because I'm the only one in the office competing, and Ryan said, we actually need someone in front of the camera that can do videos to show people, how do you get ripped? How do you get in shape? How do you put on size? How do you train? How do you eat? You know, how do you live this lifestyle while you're traveling? So we're going to put the camera on you. And I was very reluctant to that because I was so used to being, you know, just kind of over here in the corner. And reluctantly, I did it. But now in retrospect, I'm really, really glad he forced me to do that, because now I'm in a position where, you know, I have different companies because of that exposure. But I didn't really understand the value of social platforms at that time. I remember there's a woman in the office called Crystal Matthews, and she said, you should start a Facebook fan page. I'm like, a fan page? What the freaking hell are you talking about? I'm not going to have a fan page. But, you know, that's how that process kind of started, from behind the camera to kind of getting in front of it and doing these video trainings where people would follow you every single day through this process to get in shape or to get ready for an Ironman or whatever it is that we can talk about a little bit later. But what we realized, even though it was a huge undertaking, especially having a camera in your face every single day for 12 weeks, is, you know, after a few weeks, you're like, God, get out of my face. I just need some privacy here, you know? But people would really get emotionally involved in that transformation because they'd see you go through sickness. They'd see you go through injury. And it wasn't just the kind of photoshopped highlights. It was showing what everybody goes through, you know, when they have to travel, when they deal with injury, when they're sick, when they've got people around them that are not in the best of minds, or whatever distraction it is. Giving something for people to relate to gave them something to hold on to and attach themselves to say, well, if he can do it, then I can do it. It's much like, you know, you see someone, like I've done several Ironmans, and you see someone with a disability doing it, or somebody in their 70s. It's like, wow, that's inspiring. That gives me an opportunity to do it as well.
Yeah, they can do it, I can do it.
Yeah. So that's kind of where those come from. And that's what, you know, brought me, like I said, to Boise. And, you know, I've got my dream job. I'm absolutely loving what I'm doing. And then the lawyers at bodybuilding.com contact me and said, we're trying to get this information from your immigration lawyer for this extension, but there's something going wrong here. He's not giving us the required numbers that we want. So if you're okay, we're kind of going to investigate this. I was like, sure, only to find out that my immigration lawyer had not filed for my extension for me to continue to be here. So now I am over my time here by about 11 months and a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was basically told then by the lawyers that bodybuilding.com had employed to say, you need to get out of the country before that 1 year is up. Because at least if you get out of the country, you apply for your waiver, you could get straight back in. But if you're over a year, there's a 10-year mandatory that you have to stay out of the country. So it was crazy because I had to go to the Olympia that following week. And I thought, well, I'm not going to leave the country yet. I'm going to do my job, what I've set out to do. And then I'll leave the country and I'll be back in no time. And so I did that. I didn't get back into the country for like 3.5 years.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
What year was that then?
This was 2010.
Okay.
2010.
Yeah. And did you go back to Wales or where?
Went back to Wales initially, yeah. Applied for the waiver. During this time, so just before this happened, like literally around this time, I've published a book in collaboration with bodybuilding.com. And it's called Body for Life. Not Body for Life, sorry, that's Bill Phillips. Body by Design. And Simon & Schuster had signed me for that. So at the time, they were second largest publishing house. And I couldn't promote this book. But I had letters from them. I had letters from Joe Weider. I had letters from Dorian Yates. I had letters from so many people to say why I need to be in the country, from the head of the WNSO who I was competing with. And I found out, and I couldn't get this waiver. I'd go for an interview, no. And then I'd have to wait at least 3 months before I could go for another interview. You have to have that 3-month mandatory. And I couldn't understand why I couldn't get back in, and the lawyers couldn't understand, only to find out later it all comes down to that person at that time. They basically have more power than
the individual bureaucrat.
Yeah, for sure. If they've had their cup of coffee and they're happy, yeah, they'll let you in. If not, and they're pissed off, they don't like the look of you.
I don't like this guy.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what it was, because the final time I went with my waiver, it was no different to the time before.
Yeah.
It was crazy. And I was told, yeah, they have more power than the president. Maybe not now, but they did back then, for sure. And so, after 6 months of being there, during this time, I've gone to India to do a book release that I've just launched, at a bodybuilding expo. And I'm in a supermarket in Wales, and a friend of mine who's now become my manager, Jag, said, hey, there's this guy, Hrithik Roshan. He's like this biggest Bollywood star. He wants to see if you'll transform him for this trilogy of, this superhero movie that he's doing. And I'd never heard of this fella. So I said, yeah, I'll have a word with him. And kind of had a consultation with him. I thought, yeah, this guy's serious. He really, really wants this. And he was dealing with a back issue. He's binge eating and got himself out of shape, and he had a very short time period to play this superhero. So a weird turn of events happened while I'm trying to get back into the country. I end up going to India and working with this guy and transforming him. I expected it would have taken 12 weeks. It took us 9.5 weeks because he was a real responder. His physique responded really, really well, like freakishly well. So everybody in India was like, he's on steroids. He was just a freak. Very skinny guy, like in person, but had very full muscle belly. So he just looked much, much bigger than what he was. So now I've transformed him. That's ended up like on publications and TV and stuff like that. And then more of these Bollywood stars want me to transform him. And I couldn't physically take care of all this business. So I started flying in trainers from the UK and the US, Neil Hill from the US, who trains like Flex Lewis, just Joe Tong, just so many trainers, because they wouldn't listen to an Indian trainer. They didn't feel that they had authority, and they would tell the Indian trainer what to do as opposed to the other way around. It was quite bizarre. Yeah, so bizarre, because I wanted to train some of these Indian trainers because some great people, they're great trainers, but they wouldn't listen to them. It was so bizarre. So I had to keep flying in people from the US, but I wanted to kind of change that. So after traveling a lot around India, my business partner and I decided to open a gym franchise over there and basically create academies that just happen to be gyms to really train people and understand that this is a profession and you need to be treated as such, and you need to respect yourself as such. And you have to be an authoritative figure that demands that respect. So that's what we started doing. And, we started this gym franchise around India, which we still have now. We just celebrated 8 years of our one gym that we have in Mumbai just 2 days ago. And, so it was
And you're still an owner, still financial interested in that?
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. So I'll go to India like a couple of times a year, do some talks or seminars and, in the gyms. And we have like hammer strength and life fitness. So I do these hammer strength clinics. We call them there. And we've just started doing like these biohacking tours here as well, because that's growing quite a lot there, the anti-aging aspect. So, definitely got a foothold there. But then once I got my waiver finally approved, I thought, thank God, because I love Boise, absolutely love it. And, I had to foreclose on my property. I had 2 rental properties in Nampa, had to foreclose on them. It was a terrible time.
Yeah.
My parents had to fly over and put my stuff into storage, God bless them. It was a tough time. But
yeah, it's a rough period.
yeah, it was a rough period, and you're very emotional at that time. And why me? I thought I was a good guy. But then in retrospect, you realize, okay, the stars aligned. It all happened for a reason. As cliche as it sounds, but I'm really, really glad it happened that way. Maybe I wouldn't have met my wife today hadn't it been for all of that.
Right. Yeah.
So you can't just think, "Woe me." I think it's exactly how Stallone said in that Rocky. It doesn't matter how you get hit down or how many times you get hit; it's how you get back up.
Yeah. Well, amen on that one.
Yeah, amen, man.
So how did you start your supplement companies? And because I'm super interested in that, because I know that. There's so many out there, and I feel like there's not that many that you can trust. I understand, like you and your protein, like you don't have seed oils, right?
Hormones or anything like that.
Yeah. And some of these of brands that I thought, okay, they care. I mean, people that I admire that are behind some of these brands, and you look at all this stuff, and it's a lot of junk. Which is disheartening, because it's, who do you trust?
Yeah.
So, what was your philosophy that started that? How did you, get into that part of the world? And
so, yeah, I've been part of that world for so many years because I was sponsored as I was a bodybuilder.
Right.
This is going back like in the early 2000s. And then obviously working for Flex Magazine, you're working very closely with people that own supplement companies. So if I'm doing an interview with, say, a Jay Cutler or, Phil Heath, Dexter Jackson, a lot of the time it's going through the supplement company, because especially at bodybuilding.com, they are paying so much to basically have content on your website to help sell their supplements. So I kind of knew so many of the owners of the supplement companies and knew the ins and outs and what went through testing. And when I started doing my own video series, I thought, okay, now I have a responsibility. I can't just put my hands together and hope that the supplements that I'm suggesting are actually what's in it. I'll have to test it. So I put my hand in my own pocket and spend, I think it's like $280 to go and get each one of these tested, whether it's in the US or in the UK. I'd use this company called Reflex Nutrition. They'd do some testing for me. So then I realized, okay, what was in it and what wasn't. So that's when I realized, okay, some of the bigger brands aren't as authentic as they should be, but some of the smaller brands were more authentic.
Yeah.
So it was very bizarre to me. And that's kind of where I went down that rabbit hole. And then when I was in India, I'm speaking to the chief financial officer of bodybuilding.com and a formulator at bodybuilding.com, because obviously I got to know them quite closely, and spoke about, how about we bring something to the industry that no one's really, really done. So this is a brand that I had before, Unmatched. And we wanted to do something that had fermented amino acids. So just so in case your listeners don't know, unless it says fermented essential amino acids, the chances are they're derived from animal fur, human hair, or bird feathers. Those amino acids are extracted.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, we were quite polarizing when we came into the industry, because who's going to wave their flag and say, yeah, ours is derived from that? No one's doing that. Everyone's hiding that. But coming from behind the scenes, we understood and knew that. So we wanted to kind of put that exposure out there, and then all of a sudden loads of other companies are doing fermented amino acids. So there's a good thing about making these moves, because other people will either jump on board or they won't. And the unfortunate polarizing aspect of the supplement industry is that, okay, you could go to, I don't know, what do you call it, like a Ross or whatever. I don't go in there, but I know that you can get like cheaper clothes. Maybe those brands aren't good. I don't know.
Right.
But then if you're going to get a better brand that's quality, whatnot, that's okay. But when it comes to actually putting stuff in your body that is marketing itself as healthy, I've got a problem with that. If it's McDonald's and you're eating shit, go ahead.
Yeah, and I think, hey, there's a time to, whatever, live
For
it
sure.
up. Our
For
bodies
sure.
need to be resilient.
Yeah.
And, okay,
But
who
if you're
cares?
consuming something every single day, you're having electrolytes, you're having an intra-workout, you're having a pre-workout, you're having a post-workout, it's a lot of crap that you're consuming on an everyday basis. And you're part of the health and fitness industry, so shouldn't those supplements be contributing to that?
Bryce, Eddy here. Most of you know I'm an aggressive high-energy guy, a 4th-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and between bodybuilding and my high-intensity lifting sessions, I still train like I'm 25. You don't need to be a maniac like me to have painful, stiff joints, but if you do, Joint Complex by Nation Health MD can help. I'm a big believer in this stuff. It doesn't matter if you're struggling with aches or stiffness in your knees, hips, or back, Joint Complex contains natural ingredients that promote joint comfort and mobility. It features high-quality turmeric and boswellia to support a healthy inflammatory response. It contains natural eggshell membrane, which promotes strong and supple joint cartilage. Every bottle of Joint Complex is manufactured here in America, so you're getting the best quality for your money. Right now, you can try Joint Complex risk-free and save 35% on your order. Go to nationhealthmd.com and enter discount code BRYCE at checkout. That's nationhealthmd.com and discount code BRYCE to get 35% off your order of Joint Complex today.
That's where I kind of had a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I lost trust on a bunch of, things where there's been controversies where they, were saying one thing and there was
Amino spiking.
or all kinds of fillers, or, they say, oh, this won't, kick you out of a fasted state, and yet it did. And, different things like that, where it's all marketing and, very little authenticity.
Well, the thing is, a lot of these companies, they start off with a balance sheet, and it's like, okay, are we going to put all that money in the ingredients and the R&D, or are we going to put it into the marketing and use that margin of diluted ingredients to have that marketing spend?
Well, and you've got the pressure of some of these big like Amazons and things like that continuously squeeze these manufacturers or product people, so that they're getting to the point where they're no longer making money. So the only thing they can do is maybe, oh, well, we'll do some cheaper materials and things like that, which is a sad thing. But it is that pressure that's coming from some of these big corporatist sort of people that could care less and will squeeze everybody.
I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because that's what I used to tell people. Look, you can't always blame the supplement company. Yeah, it's their choice at the end of the day. But if they want to sit on the shelves of a Costco, they're going to have to give up something. If they're going to give up 55 points in order to sit on those shelves, they have to dilute their products.
Yeah, because at some point you just can't make it up in volume.
It's impossible.
I mean, they get you in, they get you making money, they get you excited about it, and then at the next meeting they're like, "Hey, here's what we need from you," and then they just put the squeeze to you over time. And I talked to a friend of mine who owns a. Well, he sold it now, but he owned a car care company, so it was polishes and things like that. And he was talking about how bad it got from when he started in the business to then selling on the Walmarts and Amazons and things like that, and just being abused to the point where they had to sell because they were faced with, oh, we have to now change our formulations, we have to use cheaper and cheaper this just to try to eke out a profit. And so I sympathize and empathize with those folks, but it's creating a world where can we trust what we're putting in our bodies?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Fortunately, I'm in a position where I've got investments elsewhere, so I don't have to rely on this to like make me millions of dollars. I don't really need that. I don't live like a lavish lifestyle. I really love living here in Boise and having kind of freedom and mountain biking or whatever it may be. But a lot of people put all their reliance in this. So they are now motivated for their team and themselves to basically retire on this. So they kind of give, they've got a lot of pressure on their shoulders. But I think what a lot of people have to really knuckle down on is just working on their DTC. Don't formulate your products for the big shelf, your brick and mortar. Formulate it for direct to consumer. And then if everything goes well, they will come to you and they will accept you for how you are. Will it work? I don't know. Because if your ingredients are very, very complex and a person behind that counter in your vitamin shop or in your GNC was working at Ross the week before, they're not going to know how to sell it. And it's going to be very, very difficult for you to compete against a lower price point product, regardless of the complexity of your ingredients.
Well, yeah, because they're making a lot of the same claims. So it's like, oh, this one's $44, this one's $32.
Yeah,
oh, it says it's the same thing. Oh, $32. That sounds like a great deal.
It's tough because, like, for instance, that protein tub, it looks very, very small.
Yeah,
but it weighs heavier than a lot of ones that's in there in Vitamin Shop that's double the size because they're filled halfway. But you're not going to know. You know, as a consumer, they're not going to look at the weight on that.
I like what you're saying there because, from a business standpoint, I think we're coming into a new golden age. And I think as a part of that golden age, and I've been saying this a lot, where it's going to be about Main Street versus Wall Street, right? And what Main Street means is, it's going to be about the relationship that you're having with your customers. It's going to be about trust. It's going to be, that direct to consumer. It's going to be, smaller products, smaller product runs, smaller businesses. And I think that's how we kind of recapture, a lot of what, business used to be here. So I think you're smart in that. People want to trust what they're doing, which this is the part where I'm going to squeeze you for some free advice. Yeah. So, I have, hired people over the years and, okay, hey, I'm going to, here are my goals, let's go. And been, given a, metric ton of supplements and things where, you're taking like, 35 things a day and all that. And sometimes that's hard to incorporate into routines. It's also incredibly expensive and things like that. And and I'm blessed I can afford those things. But half the time it's just massively just overwhelming to have to take 40 different supplements every day. So I would love to get your thoughts on like, okay, what are, if you were to start to incorporate, okay, Bryce, I want you to take these, here are the top 3 things you need to be doing. And then once you get these 3 things and you get these habits, then, okay, I want you to, invest in, these next 3 things and, and start incorporating like, building a ramp up plan to like, these are the essentials. So, what are your thoughts about what are the essentials? And my problem, just so you know, is I don't really care to eat. My lifestyle is, go, 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 and then go some more. And I don't really care about food. I have no passion with that. If I could take a painful shot every day in my stomach just to give me all that I need, I would do it. And then, have the wonderful times where we all get together in corporate celebration and then we eat.
Yeah.
But sometimes people, eating is inconvenience or getting it, so I'm just curious as to, what your thoughts are about, how do you rank the value of these things?
Yeah, it's funny you saying that though, because I guess all the listeners out there that are either on GLPs or considering GLPs are thinking, man, I wish I was like you, because that's
that's why that would be useless
noise.
For me is because, those things I don't care about an appetite.
Yeah. So, I always say like supplements can be like 2 to 5% of your overall outcomes that you're trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. So for you, if food is inconvenient, then you need to kill that inconvenience with like protein powder. Yeah. So maybe that's going to be your 5% as opposed to 2%.
Right.
Because otherwise you're not going to eat and have protein powder. So I'd say that's probably going to be one for you.
Yeah, and I do think that for me personally is the thing, and I've been working on adding that extra because I'm I'm now, so I was a big, CrossFit athlete. I'm still a regular jiu-jitsu guy. I used to own a school and teach, and I am going to be teaching again here locally. I used to do, 5 CrossFit wads a week and just, go crazy on that. And my challenge was always consuming enough protein to support the, output that I have. And I've been doing a lot better with, disciplining myself with proteins and all of that. But aside from that, what would be then the 2 most consistent things that I do are protein and creatine.
Okay, good.
And that's been kind of almost a lifelong habit.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, because there's so many benefits to it. Whether it be bone density, neuroprotection, and obviously ATP production. We're seeing more and more benefits come out from creatine as opposed to just performance.
I heard it's great for women too, and like tremendous for women.
Absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, phenomenal. And what we have, without this sound like a sales pitch, we are the exclusive sellers of something called creatine, which is creatine with guanidinoacidic acid, GAA, which is a precursor that allows it to get absorbed into the cell through 4 different pathways as opposed to the one with just monohydrate by itself. So it crosses the blood-brain barrier more efficiently as well, so it's more neuroprotective. So, that's a bit of a side note. So the second thing that I'd say...
And by the way, commercial away, man. We trust what you're doing, so,
right. Okay. But anyway, so that's the creatine. And I again, absolutely love creatine. When it comes to monohydrate, just me personally, so that the products are kind of selfishly formulated for me as well. I just get an upset stomach. I'm a sensitive little petal, with the larger particle
I can digest
sizes.
the rock, so.
Yeah, then you're fine. You're fine. Creatine monohydrate is absolutely fine as well. So the second thing, it all depends, like, you said you're quite an active person. It all depends how much you're perspiring. Then obviously I say electrolytes is a big aspect of it, because a lot of people drink a lot of water. They don't have enough electrolytes in there, so they dilute their system of electrolytes. So they become more dehydrated. Even though they're getting the volume, they're becoming dehydrated in electrolytes. So I always like to go for electrolytes. There's several reasons behind that. One of them is, if it tastes good, the chances are you're not going to eat crap, because you actually feel nourished, even though it is a liquid, of actually having something that tastes good. So I've had a lot of people that just have stopped eating crap because they're hydrated with something that tastes good at the same time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And my Uncle Nigel, shout out to Uncle Nigel, again, he's got a small holding farm. I was just with him now about 5 weeks ago, and I actually filmed him explaining to my wife how electrolytes just completely changed his life recently. Because he was going to the doctors and he couldn't understand why he was so tired, so lethargic. He would get up in the morning after 8 hours sleep, look outside onto the farm, knowing that he has to go out there and work, but just couldn't do it, just didn't have the motivation. He had to force himself. Doctors didn't know what was wrong with him. My dad said to him, just try drink more water, put this in it. And he started drinking a lot more water because it tasted better. And he's over his lethargy, his fatigue, just like that. So he's shouting from the rooftops. I've had probably about 10 or 15 people reach out to me. Hey, I was speaking to your Uncle Nigel, and want to kind of get onto it. So there can be a profound difference for some people that are, especially in the UK, you've been there. People have a tea and coffee and think they're hydrating.
Right.
Like, you go to a cafe, they're not bringing you water. You have to ask for it. And they're certainly not refilling. So there's definitely a problem with that there. The other thing that I'd say, and it's so difficult to say because it all comes down to the individual. I always say test and not guess. I always like to look at people's deficiencies. So if there's a deficiency in, like, vitamin D, for instance, then we supplement with vitamin D. But from a performance aspect, again, you said that you don't like eating much, then I'd say essential amino acids. So we have a product called Longevity EAAs that has your fermented essential amino acids, has your antioxidants in there, but also has, like, spermidine, which helps with DNA cleanup. So it actually helps with autophagy, if you're going through a fasting period. And it also has glutathione in there as well, obviously our body's master antioxidant, because we deal with a lot of oxidative stress in the environment that we live in today. Even going through fasting can be, a stressor, just like cold, just like heat, just like working out. fasting is a stressor, so kind of want to prevent a lot of the oxidative buildup that you get from these as well. So essentially amino acids, I'd say, be another one, especially if you want to recover, you're an active person, you want to stay like big, then you need to have those essential amino acids if you're not going to consume foods.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I eat fairly clean when I am eating, but yeah, I joke that I eat like a petite woman on her first date, and just don't.
I have the opposite problem.
Yeah, and just again, I don't like to stop, half the time. So, but okay, along those lines, there, I know are supplements and things that start to bubble up and start to get popular. What are some of the things that have been a waste of time over the years, or things that people have marketed that are, maybe fool's gold? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, for sure. Like calcium. Calcium, for instance. There hasn't really been shown any benefits of supplementing with calcium whatsoever at all. So, that's a big thing, isn't it? People say, oh, you got to drink your milk, you got to take your calcium supplements. You will see like cereals fortified with calcium. So that's a big misconception. And the same when you have like folic acid added to so many foods. And, there's a lot of people that have what's called the MTHFR gene, which they can't methylate. About 40% of us have that. So, I think that those are the biggest kind of drivers out there that have been misconstrued, and obviously you get a lot of these omega-3 supplements that are just rancid. They don't do anything whatsoever. So that can be an aspect that, people should kind of overlook. But there's a lot of supplements out now that have just really, really targeted like the longevity sector. I'm sure everybody's seen these hydrogen bottles, which I don't really believe in. But the hydrogen tablets and inhalation.
Yeah, Gary Bruck has been pushing a lot of that stuff.
I know. And I know the people now that are helping him with the tablets, like Tyler LeBaron and Alex Tavana, who basically, if you're using hydrogen tablets or hydrogen inhalation, it's coming from them. So they're trying to educate Gary now on how to do it properly. You can't just put them in a bottle and go, okay, I'm going to go for my workout. You have to chug it there and then as soon as those tablets.
And that makes sense to me. I was sent some of those tablets, and
they're great.
And you see that, I mean, it has that effervescent effect. It's done, but then that dissipates pretty
you
quick.
Got to drink
it.
As
It's
soon
like,
as this
you better
floats.
do it and go.
Yeah. So I'll have my little concoction in the morning, and this is great, by the way, for any of your listeners that are lacking in sleep or they're crossing time zones and they've got jet lag, is have your water, put your hydrogen in there. If you've got methylene blue, I use something called Leuco Blue, which is an extra electron, so you don't have to use as much. Throw that in there and add some creatine as well, because that's neuroprotective. You will not feel like you are lacking in sleep. Of course, get your sleep,
Right.
but you will recover straight away, very, very quickly. So I think, of course, we can take too much in the way of antioxidants, but I think it's very important that you take a different array of antioxidants. So hydrogen, that's a non-hormetic antioxidant. So you can take that straight after your workout, around your workout, absolutely fine. Glutathione, another great one. And then there's something called carbon C60. It's it's a Nobel-winning kind of atom, and you have to put it in like an oil as a carrier. And that has been shown to be, I think it's like 42 times more powerful than vitamin C. And it's been shown to extend health span as well. So I think those are phenomenal antioxidants to help with our health span and kind of reverse our biological aging. But the number one biohack is always sleep.
Yeah. Now, I've started my days out for many years with the, MCT oil in my coffee.
Yeah. So replace that. Do you use the caprylic acid, the C8?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do.
So I'd replace that with my Vital C. My Vital C is a human grade version of the C60. So you can have it in an olive oil carrier. I'll usually have that straight or on my salad. But in my coffee, I will actually put the coconut carrier with the C60 inside.
Okay, yeah, because I actually love the energy I get from that
especially
in the
if you're
mornings.
fasted.
And I've done for a lot of years, kind of modified version of intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
I tend not to really eat until 11 or noon, and just have that coffee and kind of go about my day.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to timing meals around workouts and things like that, what's some general wisdom there?
Yeah, so again, it all depends the response that you're looking from that workout. So whether you're in a deficit, you're trying to lean out or put on size and maintain size or whatever. But usually, you'd want to be eating within 2 hours of a workout. So say 90 to 120 minutes before that workout, and have something that's fast digesting. So like a fish or egg whites or something like that, because you don't want the blood in your stomach digesting the food. You need it in your muscles in order to get the required contraction.
Right.
And it's the same post-workout. You want something that with a very high bioavailability, that's easy to digest, because your body is probably in a catabolic state if you've trained really hard, and it will absorb everything like a sponge. So you want to have very small protein fractions and peptides that will get absorbed very, very quickly. So that's why a lot of people will go for a whey protein isolate post-workout, maybe with some fast-acting carbs like a Vitago. Vitago extracts its carbs from like barley, from potato, and it's kind of the handprint of that carbohydrate that makes it very unique. It's the osmolality and the permeability of that just gets absorbed. Like you could drink that during a workout, like a leg workout, and you wouldn't feel sick because it digests so quickly. So I'd use that if I'm going on a long bike ride or run, and I need some carbohydrates, because it just gets absorbed really quickly.
Yeah, because you're unique. You'd mentioned, doing like the Ironman and, some of those things. Guys, with a lot of size and, bodybuilder types don't tend to, cross over and do that stuff. How's that worked for you? And
yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. So I've always loved cardio, even from when I was racing motocross. I'm not one of these people that goes, oh, cardio, boring. I can't wait to do it. I love it. I absolutely love cardio. And that's why I'm saying, when I was in school and they said, oh, Kris easily, he daydreams. Well, that's perfect for me now, because like I'll go out and I'll go for a run or go for a swim and follow that black line and just daydream, and I'll do it.
I am not a runner, and partly I've had lower back, issues that seem to just be irritating me on a run. But I loved road biking for a while. I got into that, and I liked that just cadence, the rhythmic, meditative, just let's go. And you're right. You get into your thoughts, and you're thinking about all sorts of things. And I think there's a again a value in that 100%, sort of 100%. Meditative cardio type exercise.
And that's the one thing that biohacking kind of did for me. I got diagnosed with mold toxicity in 2014, and that's what got me into
what's that?
Mold toxicity. So when I was staying in an apartment in Mumbai.
Oh, mold.
Yeah, mold.
Oh, sorry.
And
it was that Welsh accent.
Yeah, that's it. But I got diagnosed with that, and I didn't know what mold toxicity was at the time. And, sleep was one of the things that it really disturbed. I was sleeping like 3 hours a night. So I wasn't like a good person.
I had a rental here for, the first 6-8 months that I was here. And it was in a, neighborhood, beautiful neighborhood. It was a nice house. And I think it had mold because I had this low-level cough the entire time I was there.
Could have, yeah.
And
People
then,
get different side effects from it as well.
Yeah, and then when I left, the cough ended up disappearing and kind of dissipating. But it was like a constant little, underlying little cough. It was a strange thing, and that place felt dank and damp.
Yeah, it probably was then. Probably was.
Yeah.
And then, you start looking then, you start researching and finding out, wow, the most common place to find mold in produce is coffee, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Because that's something that
I always wondered how real
unhealthy.
that was, because, the bulletproof, what's his name?
Yeah, Dave Asprey.
Dave Asprey, yeah. He always talks about that, and it sounded a little bit like a gimmick.
No. Mycotoxins. Yeah, you can test for mold spores.
Yeah,
and mycotoxins. And unfortunately, unless they are, it's always good to go for like single origin, shade grown, but make sure that it is dried out immediately. Much like if you have grains and now you put them into a vat, and now they haven't been dried out immediately, now the grain has mold, and you're consuming that mold, and it becomes a neurotoxin. And that neurotoxin can really affect you from a mental aspect.
Yeah, I need to maybe consider that more because, of course, coffee is one of the greatest things God ever gave to us. So
I can tell you a list of coffees to go get, so that's not a problem.
All right.
Because I love coffee. I don't do caffeine.
Okay.
I just do paraxanthine. So you'll find our pre-workouts don't have caffeine, and there's many reasons I can go down that rabbit hole. But I love coffee. I've become a coffee snob.
I love my coffee in the morning, and I love my caffeine in the morning, but I'm not an all-day guy.
Yeah.
and I don't need caffeine, to sustain me. But I love the sipping ritual.
Yeah,
and
I
the
love the
injection
ritual
of,
aspects as well. Yeah, it's like when my wife moved into the house with me, and I was just doing instant coffee back then, and she came in with a coffee machine and all this shit. And I was like, damn, that is good.
Yeah,
Really good. And I become a right coffee snob after that.
I love that.
Real
I love
coffee snob. But I'll look at, the sources of that coffee and what's in it, and I'll go very, very low caffeine.
Yeah.
If it's either decaf or I'll max out at 45.
Yeah. So I want to pick your brain about peptides. So I asked Corey Linder, who's a mutual friend of ours and who's my trainer right now. Hey, what should I ask Kris about? He goes, oh, get him talking on peptides. That dude has a PhD in those. But he did say that that's something that you are sharper than almost anyone else on. And that's becoming kind of mainstream in its popularity. And interestingly enough, I had a friend who I hadn't talked to in a very long time call me yesterday and said, hey, I've been recommended this, and what do you think? You seem like a guy who would know. I said, hey, I'm going to have the expert on tomorrow. So I'd love to get your thoughts on peptides and what you see in that world.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I won't say I'm the leader in that world by any means. Shout out to Jay Campbell. I think Jay Campbell is the absolute leader in that aspect. I'm actually doing a talk with Jay next week, all on peptides at Olympia University. I just think it's a fascinating world. And I came across peptides. I'd known about peptides for quite a while, but I'd never had a reason to take them until 2017 when I was doing an Ironman, actually. And I had a choice because I'd torn my supraspinatus and infraspinatus. I've torn a lot of things outside of the gym. And I could either stop my training for that Ironman and get surgery, or I could try peptides. So I spoke to Nick Andrews, who was actually a business partner of Jay's back in 2017, and said, hey, could you put together a peptide stack for me that would help me get through this Ironman? So he did the typical Wolverine stack, was a GHK, TB500, BPC, and I was blown away how much more comfortable I felt. I still had to go and get surgery after the Ironman, but then I did the peptides around the surgery as well. My recovery, doctors couldn't believe it,
right?
And it's absolutely phenomenal. So from that point on, I was kind of sold on them. But a lot of the literature had been written on peptides from the 1940s onwards in Russia. So they'd been around for many, many years. You think in the 1910s or 1920s, I think insulin, and then not long after, growth hormone was created. But then these peptides started surfacing more and more, and then a lot of the literature started getting translated into English over recent years. So now it's just become huge in the US and and worldwide. And there's just so many benefits to it. Whether a peptide bioregulator, so you have peptides that are chains of like 50 or more amino acids, but then you have these bioregulators which use like 4 or 5 or less amino acids. And they're usually in oral form, and they are stable. So that could be for your eyesight, as I told you about, or
Right.
it could be for your kidney, your liver, your cartilage. Could be for your telomeres. So the telomeres are strands that dictate your biological age. So you could extend your lifespan with these peptides. They're absolutely phenomenal. And then you have some like FDA-approved peptides, like a growth hormone secretagogue, so actually help your own body's production and pulse and speed of that pulse of that growth hormone, like a tesamorelin, for instance, that was created specifically for HIV patients that deal with a lot of adipose tissue around the waistline because of the medication that they're on. So now there's peptides that will target spot reduction. And then, of course, we've got the GLPs like your semaglutide, then your tirzepatide. And
Yeah. What do you think? Retatrutide and some of
retatrutide
those.
by far the better out of all of those.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. So that works on 3 agonists. So you've got the GLP, your GIP as well, and then glucagon. So that actually helps your body mobilize fatty acids. And there is an anti-catabolic effect to it as well. It doesn't have the physical response as much as like a GLP, your typical GLP-1, like a semaglutide or Ozempic, where it really slows the gastric emptying and you feel sick just looking at food.
Yeah.
What it does is it works more on a psychological aspect, so it shuts off the food noise. So, if you're thinking about food all the time, you go into the supermarket and you're trying not to pick up that candy bar or that beer of alcohol or whatever, you won't even have that thought. It will really shut off a lot of that food noise. So you're getting a lot of bodybuilders now that have got onto it because a lot of these people are getting ready for shows. And we spoke about, people want to be comfortable. They don't want to be uncomfortable. So they're taking these GLP-3s like your retatrutide to shut off that food noise now.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I have mixed thoughts about some of those things. Partly because I don't like all the shortcuts that people seem to be taking.
Yeah, for sure.
Like and you're seeing like with these Ozempic. I'm sure you're following all of the class action lawsuits and things for people going blind.
Tumors, like pancreatic tumors, and I heard about those like a couple of years ago from people that were actually taking it.
Right.
Said, I got a pancreatic tumor, I got off it. So I was hearing about it firsthand, and now we're actually seeing it in the press. But yeah, I think the unfortunate thing is, and like I've got some doctors here in Boise that are absolutely phenomenal, but I'm generalizing where a lot of these people, and I know people personally that have gone to these doctors, say, hey, I need to get on Ozempic or whatever, I'm overweight, I'm obese, and they will get them on it, and they will start high and go higher because, of course, there's better income out of that, but there's no outcome. There's no, okay, we're going to try this for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. We're going to continue on this road as long as you want to be. And I've seen people have not changed their habits whatsoever. You should be using this drug as a time to really focus on changing your habits because it's giving you a head start now.
Right.
So take advantage of that head start. Instead, they're using it as a crutch and they're going, okay, well, I'll just use this all the time. And I see these people that are overweight or obese just get softer and softer. They're not necessarily getting smaller. They're losing a lot of muscle. And now whatever deficiencies that they had because of their diet before are now worsened because of the slowing of the gastric emptying. So if that person was dealing with osteoarthritis before, now they're accelerating that issue.
A lot of them I've seen look like they're just all of a sudden malnutrition.
Yeah. Their bones and their muscles are just not getting the nutrients. The brains are not getting their nutrients. So I can only imagine what could be some of those outcomes in the future. If you're not feeding your brain, now what are we dealing with? More mental disorders or Alzheimer's? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I'd be interested to keep picking your brain on a peptide stack or some of those sort of things.
For sure. Yeah, like I have a lot of clients that I guide, but I have to always be upfront. I'm not a doctor. These are for research purposes only.
That's right.
You can't put yourself in a position, but I have a lot of clients that are on peptides for different reasons, and it's really, really helped their lives, helped turn their lives around. Of course, we know about the most common one, the BPCs and and stuff like that, but it's really helped the quality of people's lives. If they're not dealing with these underlying issues anymore, and now they're feeling better about themselves, and there's not one report of someone overdosing on peptides or having a negative effect other than maybe it's itchy if they've used an injectable, or maybe they have a hot flush, or if they've overdone like an Ozempic and now they're feeling sick. There's nothing that we've heard of that's been reported of a massive adverse effect. Okay, we've heard about the Ozempics, but a lot of the ones out there, these small chain of amino acids, no.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, hey, I appreciate all that, man. And I want to shift gears if you're okay with this, because you are a Brit, and man, a lot is going on right now in the UK.
Yeah,
and
place has gone to the dogs.
Yeah, and I've had a great affection for the English in general, and for that.
I've never had any affection for the English.
Well, that's because you're you're a Welshman. But no, but I mean the entirety of the UK I appreciate, because I've got to travel for business there a lot, and I've got dear friends over there, and I got to experience all of the vast differences in all the regions, for such a, kind of tiny island by comparison to the United States.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
What I found is how tribal people are there. When you talk to, somebody from Manchester and you find out they, hate their, neighbors in Birmingham, it's like,
or
what?
Scousers, from Liverpool.
Yeah, or, you go up to Newcastle and you cannot understand a word that they're saying. But it was fun, and I generally like the people in all of the UK. But man, they have really been surrendering to the forces of just oppression, I think. And you see the loss of free speech. People are getting arrested for social media posts, and some of them are just opposing ideas.
Yeah.
And you know, saying that they don't want certain things, or saying that they want England to be filled with English.
Yeah.
You know, things like that. I mean, it's really shocking, and also the you know, rise of Islam in some of those areas. I mean, it's almost unrecognizable in some of the cities now. You know, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'm usually naive to a lot of the things that go on from a political front, and that's usually by choice.
Yeah, you got to leave that up to guys like
Yeah,
me.
yeah, exactly. And I'm like, you know what? Like, I kind of take my dad's approach, and he's informed, but he doesn't get involved.
Right.
And you know, he's very chilled out. And I see how he used to be to what he is now, and I'm like, yeah, I want to be like that. But you can't avoid it. You just can't avoid it. It's in your face now. Like with some of my relatives, for instance, you know, the stuff that they would post usually would just be fun stuff, or maybe about a tractor run, or maybe about some sort of agricultural event. But now they're posting about this stuff because it's in their face, and it's really pissing people off.
Yeah.
Because I feel like they're losing their identity, and rightfully so. Like, I just came back from Wales, and you know, we traveled around Italy as well. And we had our honeymoon 5 years late, and it's you go to a lot of these countries because you want to experience that culture.
Right.
But then what I found is that when we went to these different places, the culture was very different because it was diluted with so many other cultures. And it was very, very different, you know, because we've seen, obviously, borders being open. But like when you say that UK is being oppressed, it's like my wife comes from Romania. And of course, you know, her mother lives here in Nampa, but she was over there during communism. And when she talks about things that she went through in communism, I'm like, wow, there's a lot of similarities to what's going on in the UK right now. It's crazy to see what is happening. And I just don't know what the outcome is. I don't know how this is going to 360 itself or 180 itself, because now they're talking about digital ID now on top of everything. It's like, wow, there's a little bit more control that's coming down the pipeline. It's not even slowing itself down, and it's becoming very obvious. They're not even trying to hide it. So, you know, like I said, I've got a couple of friends there that, you know, worked very high up in military. And, you know, one of my friends, I won't name his name, you know, he's in Libya for the last 15 years doing a lot of security work, in charge of security there. And he feels vulnerable, and he's trying to get his he's got a interview in January to get his green card here. You know, so people like that are feeling the vulnerability. There's a problem.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think we're in really dangerous times, and you know, when you can't speak out against it, that's what's terrifying. You know, and it's okay to say, hey, I want you know, Wales to be filled with the Welsh, or you know.
But then you're seen as racist.
Well, and that's absurd,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you know, it's okay for us to have sovereign countries and, you know, distinct people groups and, you know, all of that. And there's truly nothing racist about that. I mean, that's what, you know, makes us all, I think, appreciate those places, is that you know, you get to see different cultures. And, you know, fortunately, you know, from, you know, the UK to what's happening even here in America, you know, we're all below replacement rate. And then you have some of these other third world countries, you know, having, you know, 8 times the number of children that we're having.
Yeah.
And when you allow that on top of just unfettered immigration and open borders, it's changing the complexity or the complexion of everything. And I don't mean, you know, white versus brown or anything like that. I mean, you know, the color of your skin's are irrelevant, but what it's doing is it's, you know, it's destroying the uniqueness of cultures. And, you know, I think, you know, most cultures, there's some that should not be celebrated. I don't think it's a good idea to, you know, sexually mutilate young girls, which are happening in Michigan, in some of our American cities. I mean, they had the Islamic call to prayer going out in Michigan here in the U.S., which, you know, kind of the first time ever. So some of that stuff, I think, is destructive to Western culture. So I asked that because I wanted to see if, you know, your friends and family are feeling that.
They're feeling it. And, you know, the funny thing is, like, I was exposed to it first when I was living in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
So in Sydney, where the place where I purchased my gym was away from the beaches, the northern beaches. It was in Western Sydney. So it was very much like an Islamic, a Muslim sort of area. Because I remember I went to the butchers and I wanted to get some bacon. And they looked at me like I was from a different country, and they said, "We don't sell bacon." I'm like, "What? I just didn't know.
Sure,
I had
right.
no idea." And a lot of my members, some of them were great people, from Muslim background, but there was a lot of things that were happening in that area that I was exposed to, and you're seeing it in the newspapers. It's like, oh wow, it feels like Australia or Sydney, and this part of Sydney has been overrun. A lot of the signs were in Islamic writing and whatnot. And there's a lot of things that was going on. And of course, I'm generalizing, but gang rapes and things that I'd never been exposed to
Right.
in my life. So that really gave me an internal look of what could possibly be happening. And when I was having conversations with people that had never been exposed to that, but they were just seeing what was online, they had a completely different viewpoint than what I had
Mm-hmm.
at that time and, today. But now we're starting to see more and more of this happen as we become a little bit more overrun and those cultural indifferences come to a head. And, you mentioned, that a lot of them are having more children than what we are. And I've seen them actually admit this within the country that they've come to and said, we're going to have more children than you. And by the time it's like 2045 or 2050, we will overpower you.
Oh yeah, and by the way, that's actually a value that they hold, or something that they declare quite openly.
Yeah.
Is that's part of the plan?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of it's our fault because, we emphasized other things than, growing big families and, I think some of the things that we should be emphasizing. So, yeah, I find it interesting. But again, I wanted to get your take, not make this, an overly political episode. But yeah,
No,
I did want to ask you that.
And, a lot of it comes to mind with me after the fact a lot of the time because now it's like thrown in my face. Either, I'll have a conversation with my wife or I'll find it online. For instance, after Charlie Kirk, I didn't really know anything about Charlie.
Yeah.
But then after the fact, now I'm seeing more of the things come up and the debates that he had. I'm like, wow, that guy had such good character, such good morals. And the things that he said just was so... It's not as if it was genius. It was just logical. It was just common sense.
Yeah, well, and he was he was an autodidact and an incredibly brilliant guy. I mean, he was a savant when it comes to these things, and I got to see his evolution. I mean, I used to get to drive him around to events and things, and I got to see how he just grew over time. But he was one of the just best communicators of philosophical, whether it's political or religious ideas, he knew it, and he knew it, better than most anyone, and could at such a young age, articulate it with kindness. I mean, and it's a shame to watch, people, sully his name or call him a racist or, things like that, because he clearly was not. And you can only take things out of context to try to, do that to him. But the people who are doing that know that they're doing that.
Yeah,
and it's a great evil to, to misquote people for propaganda purposes. But yeah, no, he's an incredible man. And I've been overjoyed as a, friend of his, to see the revival that's happening and to see people like you who'd never really listened to anything that he said, or, maybe you're vaguely aware of who he was or had heard his name, but then to get to see some of those videos and talks and go, oh, that's who that guy was.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
cool.
such common sense. It was just such a shame that there was so many idiots put in front of him. It's
Yeah.
like he had to waste his time debating these people. Come on.
Yeah, but you know what he did, and I always say this because I'll engage in some of those debates and discussions, whether it's in person or online or on the show, and he wasn't doing it to change their mind, but it was the people who were around and listening, and people like you that listen to it afterwards, and and hear his point of view on those sort of things. That's who he does it for, and it also puts on display some of the just unrepentant evil that people believe. And so it's like, wow, they really believe men can get pregnant, and they're going to stand there and argue that, stuff like that, got so absurd. And we're seeing a tremendous vibe shift. And I am so grateful for
Yeah,
that.
like instantly
Yeah.
since that happened, it's like wow, it's like become world spread, especially in the Western world.
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
we've
Well, I
seen
mean,
it.
and in the UK, I mean, they were having. I had a friend who was in London at the time, and they had some protests and things that were going on
Yeah.
in pro UK
Yeah, I saw that.
protests,
I saw that.
and then those were those turned into Charlie Kirk vigils and stuff as
That's it.
well, and hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets. I mean, it he created, I think, a worldwide vibe shift.
Yeah, because what was quite funny is that I noticed there's some people that I grew up with online, and some of them, kind of become very hippie-ish. And I thought, oh, okay, they're going to be protesting against this now, and they weren't. They were actually for it, and I was very surprised to see that shift.
Well, a lot of it is, and Charlie would say, I mean, we have a lot in common with those hippie-ish people. The traditional liberal and the traditional conservative aren't that far apart, right? But what happened was you had this massive Overton window shift towards the far left.
Mm.
And so even some of those traditional liberal people, like a Joe Rogan, who I grew up in the jiu-jitsu world with, were considered all of a sudden conservative. And he held, almost exclusively more liberal views.
Yeah.
And yet, all of a sudden, what, he's a conservative? I mean, it got absurd.
Mm.
But when people go so far towards, the ideas of communism and socialism and the ideas of just a total departure from reality, like men could get pregnant, or you could be born in the wrong body, or things like that. I mean, it sort of exposes all of that. So so we're in interesting times, man.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah,
And
well,
it's crazy to think that it's happened just in our lifetime. My upbringing to what I see happening in the world now is like two completely different lifetimes that I can't mold together. I just can't put it together in my head. Like, when did this happen?
yeah. Well, I'll leave you with a little bit of an answer there, because it happened a long time before our lifetime. We just didn't know. I mean, if you have a Christian worldview or a Christian viewpoint on this, we've got sort of the big enemy, right? And we've got his demons, minions, and useful idiots, and it was in the 40s and 50s and 60s that the long march through the institutions to capture the schools and the universities and things like that, in favor of that centralized control of the world, that, that control of everything, and they used communism and socialism and things like that as a sales pitch. But really, it's the people who love liberty and the people who want control. And that's what the battle is really about. And, there's people in this world that want to control what you and I get to do in life, because they think they're better than us. And that's really what it is down to. And they'll use and manipulate people and divide us to get there. And we saw that happen, decades and decades ago. It's just all of a sudden it's sort of, civilization is a very thin veneer.
Mm.
And it's very easy to get to chaos. And that's what started to happen, is chaos.
Interesting.
Yeah, but you and I got to live, I think, man, the 80s and 90s were the greatest time ever.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Great music.
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, man, thanks for coming on and,
No,
sitting down
appreciate
with
it.
me. And I like to, getting to know your story. How can we help you? Where do we buy the supplements? How can we pay attention to all the rest of the things that you're doing, or engage you if
Yeah, it's probably best for people just go to my Instagram, because everything and all links are basically there, and I'll answer questions there if anyone sends me a direct message. So that's Kris, Kris, Gethin, Gethin.
Yeah, get thin. Right?
Get thin, baby.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for coming on. I appreciate
No,
it.
thanks for having me here, buddy. I really appreciate it. It's a good chat.
Yeah, for sure. Well, to God be the glory, and we are out. Bryce, Eddy here. Many of you know me for encouraging self-reliance, knowing why you believe what you believe, and helping people prepare for the challenges of our time. But today I want to talk to you about protecting your household's future, starting with your finances. I believe that America is coming into a golden age of opportunity.
Right now, gold has surged past $4,000 an ounce, a historic record. And the biggest names on Wall Street are predicting even more growth into 2025 and 2026, with price targets climbing as high as $6,000. And on top of that, we see global instability and nations working together to undermine America's influence, including information warfare, economic weaponry, political subversion, psychological operations, and social manipulation. That's why I've partnered with American Independence Gold. They're veteran owned and they give back, donating proceeds to Tunnel to Towers in honor of our first responders and heroes. And here's the opportunity for my listeners and supporters. You can receive up to $10,000 in free gold and silver credited to your account with qualifying purchases. That's real, physical gold and silver, tangible assets that can hold in your hands to defend your wealth. Don't wait until it's too late. Go to bryceeddygold.com. That's bryceeddygold.com or call 833-324-4653. Again, that's 833-324-GOLD. Take action today. Protect your family and strengthen your future, because freedom and security aren't handed to us. They're preserved by the choices we make. This is Bryce Eddy. Don't just prepare for tomorrow. Own a piece of it.